The movie opens as we see a girl named Jody and her boyfriend, Kevin, arriving at a convenience store. But then, they abruptly point a gun at the cashier and scream at him to hand over all the money from the register. The cashier complies, and Kevin heads outside with all the money. But Jody notices a safe behind the counter and demands that the cashier open it. Surprisingly, the cashier stays calm and says she won't like what's inside. He then taunts her, saying that out of all the things she could have done in life, she chose to do this. Jody, now furious, starts counting down, and a loud gunshot rings out through the air moments later. The scene then shifts to a forest, where we see a woman named Samantha walking, appearing terrified and panicked. She notices a small cabin in the distance, and rushes there, hoping to get some help. Samantha finds the place empty, although there's an old, dusty radio, a bed, and also a bag that contains some food. But then, she notices a man carrying an axe approaching the cabin, so she quickly hides. The man enters the cabin, while Samantha is under the bed. He grabs his bag which contained the food, and leaves, causing Samantha to sigh with relief. Moments later, she bolts from the cabin and runs frantically, only to come across the man from before, and she stumbles hard to the ground and injures her leg. But the man, whose name is Tom, turns out to be surprisingly kind and offers to help her. The two head back to the cabin, where Tom carefully tends to her injuries. Samantha apologizes for stealing his food, and admits she hasn't eaten anything since yesterday. She explains that her car broke down last night, and her husband went to a nearby gas station but never came back. Samantha then asks if he has a phone, but Tom claims he doesn't have one, and there's just an old radio, which doesn't work. He surprisingly shares that he also had car trouble, and he's been stranded out here for 3 days. Hearing this, a scared Samantha wants to leave and find her husband immediately, but he warns her that the temperature outside could reach -5 degrees Celsius at night. Next, the two head to Samantha's car, where Tom checks the problem and learns that it has run out of fuel. Samantha asks what happened to his car, and Tom reveals he got into a minor accident and wrecked it. After leaving a note for Samantha's husband, Adam, the two grab some blankets from the car, before heading off to the cabin. Later in the cabin, Tom gives Samantha some water he had fetched from a small creek nearby, but strangely, when he went back again, he couldn't find it. Tom wonders why her husband left her in the car, so Samantha explains it's because she's pregnant. Hearing this, the man offers to sleep on the floor and gives her the bed, promising that he will get them out of here. In the next scene, Samantha experiences a nightmare in which she's trying to call out to someone while writhing in pain. When she wakes up, Tom is nowhere to be found, but she's shocked to discover a blonde woman lying unconscious just outside. She then drags the woman inside, while Tom is seen extracting gasoline from his vehicle to use in Samantha's car. Shortly after, the blonde woman wakes up, who turns out to be none other than Jody from the opening scene. She's shocked by her whereabouts, so Samantha tries to explain how she was found unconscious outside. But a suspicious Jody angrily demands to know where Kevin is. Samantha has no idea who she's talking about, so Jody immediately storms out. In another scene, gunfire erupts in the distance, startling Tom so badly that he spills all the gasoline. A few moments after, another gunshot rings out, and Tom frantically calls out to see if anyone is around, but there's no answer. Meanwhile, Jody returns to the cabin, clearly annoyed that there is no phone or bathroom. She assumes this is Samantha's place, and that she lives here like a hermit, but the latter clarifies how she got stuck here after she and her husband ran out of fuel. Just then, Tom arrives, and is shocked to see a new girl, so Jody introduces herself. He then asks for her story, and Jody responds that she is from Detroit, and that she had a fight with her boyfriend. He ended up kicking her out of the car and leaving her on the street. Tom tells her that she can stay here, but she needs to start pitching in from tomorrow, which she agrees to. That night, we see Jody having a nightmare of being tied up and injected by someone. The next day, Jody and Samantha get into a friendly chat, where they start to learn more about each other. But their conversation quickly turns into an argument when they disagree about their location, since Jody is confident they are in Wisconsin, while Samantha insists they are in New Hampshire. Meanwhile, Tom is deep in the woods, marking trees to measure how far he's traveled. But to his horror, he finds himself right back in the cabin where he started despite walking in a straight line. He runs into Jody, who insists that Samantha has lost her mind since she thinks they're in New Hampshire. This shocks Tom as well, and he rushes to talk to Samantha. Later, the three begin debating about the place. But things get worse when Tom shockingly claims they are in South Dakota. This only deepens their confusion, as each of them is confident about their location. Tom senses something is seriously wrong with this place, and asks the girls if they're absolutely sure about where they think they are. Later, he warns them that time is running out, and if they don't move soon, they'll run dangerously low on water and food. He suggests that they go out tomorrow, and walk as far as they can, which the girls agree to. That night, we see Tom having a nightmare which involves a gun. The next morning, the trio leaves the cabin early, and begins walking in the woods. Samantha and Jody begin chatting along the way, and Jody shares how she has never met her mom. It turns out her mom died on the day she was born, and she was raised by her grandparents. Moments later, Jody suddenly trips over something and falls, during which a stack of money falls from her pocket. A shocked Tom demands to know how she got so much money, but she simply responds that she got it working with her boyfriend. Meanwhile, Samantha's attention is drawn to a mysterious door in the ground. Tom then uses his axe to break the lock, and upon heading inside, they are shocked to see that it's actually a military bomb shelter. They discover plenty of canned food and vintage wine there, as well as a map. Samantha then notices that everything here is written in German, and suspects they must be in Poland. Jody asks how she knows this, so Samantha explains that her dad was German, but it was her mother who taught her the language since her father died in the war. Jody is shocked by the coincidence, and she confesses that her dad also died in the war. The trio then packs up the food and drinks before leaving the bunker. But again, moments later, they find themselves back at the same cabin. This shocks them, as they were certain they had been walking in a straight line, and had traveled far from the cabin, yet here they are again. That evening during dinner, Tom opens up and shares that no one would even notice if he went missing. He reveals that his mother was executed, and that he was raised in a South Dakota orphanage. Later, while the women are alone, Samantha tells Jody she wants to see the bundle of money since she's never seen that much before. Jody then pulls it out, and admits that she robs gas stations and supermarkets with her boyfriend, which leaves Samantha in shock. But Jody justifies herself, saying that she grew up with nothing and never went to college, so she does whatever she can to survive. However, upon inspecting the notes, Samantha thinks it's some kind of joke because the money was printed in 1984, which, according to her, is in the future. This shocks Jody, and when she asks what year she thinks it is, Samantha reveals 1962. When asked the same question, Jody shows her jacket, leaving Samantha stunned. Just then, Tom enters the cabin, and when the women ask what year it is, he shockingly claims it's 2011. The women then reveal what year they're actually from, and Tom wonders if they are joking. Suddenly, a loud gunshot rings out from outside, adding to their horror. Tom peeks out and sees a man holding a rifle, so they step outside and cautiously ask for his help. But the man raises his rifle and speaks in German. Tom quickly drops his axe, and Samantha states they mean no harm, but the German man knocks Tom unconscious. The next morning, Tom wakes up with his hands and feet tied, and he notices that the women are also tied to chairs, while the German man is missing. Based on the vintage wine, old radio, and the bomb shelter, they assume they probably time traveled to World War II, which explains the bomb shelter. Samantha then asks Tom if time travel was invented by 2011, and if he brought them here. However, he clarifies that even though 2011 seems far-fetched, it isn't that much more advanced. Moments later, the German guy returns, and unties Tom, before aggressively pushing him out of the cabin. The man doesn't understand English, and starts beating Tom up in the woods. At one point, Tom manages to break free, and tries to run away, but the German guy once again captures him, and ties him to a tree in the woods. Next, the German guy returns to the cabin, and angrily questions where the women are from. His gaze is drawn to the locket around Jody's neck, and the angry man demands to know how she got it. Samantha quickly translates that it belonged to Jody's mother, but the German doesn't believe her and raises his gun to shoot. Here Samantha reveals that she also has a similar locket. The confused German pulls out his own locket, which looks the same and contains a photograph of a woman, whom Samantha shockingly recognizes as her mother. Later, the German leads the two women to Tom, and Samantha asks if he has a locket like theirs, but it turns out he doesn't. They then begin discussing the bizarre situation, and it turns out Tom has untied himself.
Was weißt du? How to untie a slip knot.
The scene cuts to the cabin, where the German guy lies unconscious and tied up, while the other three seem scared. Samantha then shockingly reveals that the woman in the locket is her mom, while Jody claims it's her grandma. Samantha also mentions that her father's name was Hans Neumann, and after checking the German guy's documents, it turns out they're the same. When Samantha asks Jody's birthday, she reveals it's November 11, 1962, and it turns out to be the exact date Samantha's baby is due. She also asks if her dad's name is Adam Cohen, and if his parents raised her, which Jody confirms. The room falls dead silent as the devastating truth sinks in. Samantha is actually Jody's mother, and the horror of knowing her husband will die in the war devastates her. After she leaves the cabin in tears, Tom drops a bombshell, and tells Jody that she's actually his mother. Jody calls it bullshit, pointing out he didn't have a locket, and she isn't even pregnant. But Tom claims he did have the locket, but just didn't bring it. He reveals that his mom was a criminal who robbed gas stations throughout the state, shot a cashier, and even murdered his father, Kevin, which led to her arrest and execution. The weight of this brutal reality crashes down on Jody, and she also storms out of the cabin. The women catch up in the woods, and Samantha is devastated to learn that she will die in childbirth. She then asks about Adam, and Jody reveals that he will die fighting in the Vietnam War, leaving her alone with Adam's parents. Jody also shares that her grandparents were abusive, and shows her brutal scars that deeply break Samantha's heart. Later, Samantha approaches her dad and explains everything to him in detail. She moves to untie him, while Tom warns that Hans could be dangerous, but Samantha informs Tom that she's actually his daughter. She then pleads for his trust, to which he agrees. But unfortunately, the moment he's free, Hans grabs his gun and rifle and takes off running from the cabin. At this moment, Samantha once again recalls her nightmare, and shares it with Jody and Tom. She reveals that in her dream, she was home alone during her labor, while Adam was overseas, and the ambulance didn't make it in time. Tom then shares that he had a dream about the priest who abused him, and he shot the priest before shooting himself. Jody also recalls a dream of being executed for murdering Kevin, which means all of them dreamed their deaths. However, Tom states that these things haven't happened yet, so they still have time to change or stop them. They realize the whole chain of events starts with Hans' death, so they decide to stop it first. They go to the bomb shelter to check the map, and Samantha reveals that her dad died in an airstrike at Wielun, Poland, where they are right now, and today is the day he'll die. Here, Tom theorizes that if Hans doesn't die, his wife won't remarry, and then Samantha will have her mom to take her to the hospital during childbirth. This means she will survive, Jody can grow up to be a good woman instead of a criminal, and Tom will grow up with his real mom. Up next, the group decides to bring Hans to the bomb shelter when the airstrike happens. They return to the cabin, where Hans has managed to establish contact on the radio. They try to warn him about the bombing, but he refuses to believe them and rushes outside, insisting he must carry out the mission. Tom tries to stop him, but the two men erupt into a fierce struggle, during which this happens. Seeing this, Hans runs off, leaving the other two to desperately tend to the injured Jody. Tom begins to panic, insisting that if Jody dies, he will never exist. He then rushes to find Hans, while Samantha stays by her daughter's side, fighting desperately to keep her alive. After a while of running, Tom eventually manages to catch up to Hans, who tries to attack him. The two get into an intense fight, after which Hans once again runs away in the opposite direction. But Tom realizes that no matter where they run, they will end up back at the cabin, so he heads there. The two then meet up at the cabin again, where Jody is on the verge of death. Hans begins shooting at Tom, but the latter starts to slowly vanish. He soon disappears completely as Jody takes her last breath, since her death means his existence will cease. Seeing this, Samantha angrily approaches Hans, accusing him of causing it all. But there's no time to waste as several aircraft fly overhead, ready to drop missiles. Samantha once again begs her dad to save himself, not just for him, but for the future of all his descendants. He finally believes her this time, but just as they rush to the shelter, several missiles drop from the sky, causing Samantha to hit her head on a rock and pass out. Thankfully, her dad carries her inside the shelter, and manages to lock the door just in time. Several missiles keep hitting the forts, during which Hans notices Samantha's existence flickering on and off, before she disappears completely. Elsewhere, we see Jody's dead body also disappear in front of the cabin. Hans then takes a look at the picture of his wife, but, just then, a huge missile hits the cabin and destroys everything. Time begins to reset, and everything that had happened till now is played in reverse. The scene then cuts to 1985, where we see Jody at the store, just like at the beginning of the movie, but her appearance has changed this time, and she looks sophisticated, unlike her punk self before. After paying for her items, Jody exits the store and notices Kevin, who is now accompanied by another girlfriend. The couple heads inside the store, before pulling out a pistol and threatening the cashier for money. The cashier hands over the money, but the woman demands he open the safe as well, and the scene plays out exactly like before. The cashier agrees to open it, but warns that she won't be able to handle what's inside, right before a gunshot goes off. The scene then cuts to Jody, who now lives in a luxurious house, and we see a newspaper headline that announces the recent death of Hans Neumann, a revered war veteran and philanthropist. Jody then approaches her mother, Samantha, who appears much older, and they walk together to the beach to scatter Hans's ashes. The movie ends on a bittersweet note, revealing that Tom may never exist in this timeline, since he was the son of Jody and her thief boyfriend, whose paths have now diverged into separate worlds.